Presentation on Allsburg. He was my author. Okay, so for my introduction, I started out with a quote from A2Z-quotes.com. And the Polar Express is about faith and the power of imagination to sustain faith. It's also about the desire to reside in a world where magic can happen, the kind of world we all believe in as children, but one that disappears as we grow older. And what this means is it's a sad truth that as we grow older, we lose our ability to have our imagination. Also, a good imagination is important because it allows us to put ourselves in the reader's shoes, the character's shoes, so that we can go throughout the book. Also, this book shows how it's important not to lose your inner child to get what's most out of these books. Also, Allsburg's impact on literacy. It promotes creativity from Zathura to Jumanji. They're like board games that are based on his books that are just in creative places like outer space and the jungle. He has a time-traveling bed in Just a Dream. So his creativity is just promoted throughout all of his work. Also, it helps students' imaginations grow. So by reading these books, they're able to come up with fantasy stories and be able to develop those for the teacher. Also, he has a lot of open-endedness in his stories that he writes. There's a lot of hints that he doesn't come out right and say that something happens. So there's a lot of predictions and inferences that come from his work. So a summary of what I've learned. He never really knew what he wanted to do after college. He went to this school in Detroit, Michigan, and they usually had a University of Michigan administrator come down and interview some students and give them some scholarships, like a handful of them. And whenever he was filling out what field he would like to study in, he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do. So he left it blank and he went into the interview. And the admissions officer was like, "You didn't fill out what you want to study in, so let's go through this list and try to figure out what you want to do after high school." So he's going through the list and he sees A and D and he didn't know what it meant, so he asked him. And it meant architecture and design, so he's like, "Oh, that might be fun, so I'm going to do that." So he just randomly picked that. So he would attend the University of Michigan going for the A and D major. But what he had to do, because he got officially denied at first, was he lied to the administrator and said that he was taking private art lessons on Saturdays because he was so good at art, but when in reality he never took art with the high school and he wasn't taking those lessons. What I also found out was he wasn't only an author but an illustrator. He's illustrated around 20 books, as well as being the author of over 20 books. Also, he first started illustrating his work for his wife, who was a grade school teacher. She would read books to her class, and if she needed illustrations to go with her stories, he would illustrate for her. He also brought out the inner child in most of his work. Most of his stories have a younger child going on a journey. So just like Just a Dream, it's about protecting the ecosystem, but the kid doesn't like that at first, and he's littering, and then he goes in his time-traveling bed and sees what the future is like after littering, and then he wants to become more eco-friendly. So also, he brings out a lot of creativity in his work. Like I said before, in Jumanji and Zathura, just the names are just crazy. But also the stories and using a board game to go through space, it's just something I like. Also, like I said before, open-endedness there's a lot of open-endedness in his stories. The Stranger is a good example. They invite this man in, and there's all these hints that he's Jack Frost, but it never comes out and says he's Jack Frost. So, my next slide is my favorite book by him was called The Wreck of the Zephyr, and I'm going to read 2 pages from it, but what the story is about is this younger man's going through the woods one day, and he comes upon this cliff, and there's this old man in a wrecked boat at the top of the cliff. And the man asks, how did this boat get up here so far away from the water? And what the old man says is, let me tell you a story of what happened. So the old man started the story by saying there was a sailor at this village. And he said this sailor was one of the best sailors of all time. He was hard-headed and didn't listen to any of what any other villagers thought. If the seas were rough, he loved it. And there was this one night, and the fishermen, they told him not to go out on the ocean, but he yet didn't listen. And what happened was, the wind whistled, and the ringing of the zephyr pounded her way through the water. The sky grew black, and the waves rose up like mountains. The boy struggled to keep the boat from going over. Suddenly, a gust of wind caught the sail. The boom swung around and hit the boy's head. He fell to the cockpit floor and did not move. So what happened was he went against what everyone said, went on the water, got knocked out by his boat, and then the next morning he woke up on an island on the beach and with nowhere to find his boat. He didn't know where it went. So he's going around this island looking for his boat, and he comes upon it, but it's being towed into a harbor by flying boats, which is pretty cool. I've never seen a flying boat. So after he goes down to the village to claim his boat, he's like, hey, can you guys show me how to fly your boats? I always wanted to fly my boat because I'm the best sailor from my village. And so they put new sails on his boat, and they practice, and he can't really get it out of the air. So they're like, okay, we'll try it in the morning. But he wakes up in the middle of the night, takes his boat, ends up flying it somehow back to his village, and he crashes it. And the story ends, a remarkable tale, I said, as the old man stopped to relight his pipe. What happened to the boy? He broke his leg that night. Of course, no one believed the story about flying boats. It was easier for them to believe that he was lost in the storm and thrown up here by the waves. The old man laughed. No, sir. The boy never amounted to much. People thought he was crazy. He just took odd jobs around the harbor. Most of the time he was out sailing, searching for the island and a new set of sails. A light breeze blew through the trees. The old man looked up. Wind coming, he said, I've got some sailing to do. He picked up a cane and watched as he went slowly toward the harbor. So what this open ending this shows, and what you can take from this, is that the guy was limping off, and he also said that he broke his leg that night. It just gives hints that the old man is the sailor that was hard-headed and never listened to his villagers. So in conclusion, Chris Van Allsburg's work has impacted children's literacy by allowing the reader to activate their imagination, as well as allowing the reader to inference or come up with a creative ending to the open-ending stories he has published. And here are my works.